Hey Scott. Okay, so this is our interview. I'm just going to go through these questions, and if you have anything to add, feel free. So, please tell me about your background, academic and especially in technology.
So academic, well, backing up, I grew up in Colorado. Had a passion for computers, computer science that I learned beginning in fifth grade. The original Radio Shack TRS-80 was my first computer that I had experience with. So I developed a passion for computers, for programming, dating way back very early in my life. I continued to...
What languages were you doing?
Basic.
Okay.
Which is even more basic than Visual Basic today. Very, very, pun intended, basic programming method. So I got interested in programming at an early age, continued to program, and decided in high school that I wanted to continue to pursue a very strong technical training and technical education. So I went to Princeton for college, majored in electrical engineering. I think I've always had a strong passion for physical things and always have an interest in how things work. Growing up, I took things apart constantly and put them back together and broke them and fixed them.
What was the first thing you remember taking apart?
Probably a VCR.
Okay.
One of
Did
the
your parents
original
get mad?
VCRs. No, they loved
Okay.
it. Other than the fact that reassembling them was much harder than tearing them apart.
Yeah.
So I went to Princeton, majored in double E. Princeton, just by curriculum, is very focused on having a broad educational background. So in addition to taking lots of traditional double E classes, I took a lot of computer science classes, refined my programming skills. Also took a lot just because I was interested in a lot of econ classes, so I developed an interest, especially in the quantitative side of economics in both macro and microeconomics. Probably, if Princeton doesn't really have minors, but I probably was close to having a minor in econ.
Okay.
At Princeton. So I graduated in Princeton in '90. Growing up and certainly given my technical background, I'd always had an interest in Silicon Valley, and it was a no-brainer for me to move out here after graduation. I started at the first company I worked for was Silicon Graphics, SGI, which was a phenomenal breeding ground to learn what it's like to be an engineer, how to develop sensational products at the time, again, 1990.
What was the name of your role? Do you remember?
I was what was SGI's? Member of the technical staff was their
Sounds
terminology. MTS, yes. That was the entry-level engineer. We built some really cool things. We built, a lot of the workstations that were, for SGI they would call them low end, but that still meant $20,000 systems that they were selling to graphics designers, to movie studios, to their traditional client base. And at that point in time, there was no company in the Valley that was hotter than Silicon Graphics. I mean,
Really?
They had the best of the best engineers, and everywhere you looked, there were PhDs and brilliant people, incredibly motivated. SJ's eventual downfall was they didn't have the business sense to back up all this technical expertise that they had, and they didn't have the discipline to say enough is enough, and actually you have to meet the needs of the market instead of building, uber high-end, super expensive products. But that was a fantastic way to really learn how to develop products, how to work as a member of a team. Eventually, I left Silicon Graphics and joined a small company that was developing more commodity workstation products. That company also developed some graphics technology, and we sold that company in 95 or 94. And then I left that to start my own company, which is called 3D Effects, and that's kind of where my true entrepreneurial spirit kind of began to take hold. we recognized at the time that the world of computer graphics was quickly coming into consumer side of things. So SGI had done wonderful things in terms of super high-end 3D graphics. You know, the movie makers and those used silicon graphics, like the Terminator movie and Jurassic Park and all those movies.
Yeah.
Those were famously using silicon graphics workstations and high-end systems to develop those amazing special effects that had never been seen before in movies. But the technology was evolving at such a pace, especially the chip technology, the silicon technology, that we came in with the formation of 3D effects at a perfect time where the market was starting to demand three-dimensional graphics. You could now do on a single chip what used to take an entire system to do. So we built a company to exploit this opportunity.
What year was that? Do you recall?
We started the company in 95.
95.
We raised great money from traditional sandhill venture capitalists, developed truly revolutionary products that I think most would say transformed the world of consumer graphics. Took it public in '98, and just it was a true rocket ship. Eventually
What
sold
was
it
your
to
role
NVIDIA.
there?
What was my role?
Yeah.
So I was co-CTO, member of the board. By the end, I was running engineering and business development and parts of marketing, and I guess in essence, like a COO of the company.
And not to get too derailed, but 1995, that was when it was truly Silicon Valley, right? And so what was Jobs? Were you aware of Jobs? Was it a very small culture at that time?
Of Steve Jobs?
Or startup culture. In
Yeah.
1995, it must have been just a few people running the place.
No. I mean, I think the entrepreneurial spirit of SGI, even of SGI, of Silicon Valley, dates back even to the Silicon Graphics of the world. I mean, that started in early '80s, I think.
Okay.
Jim Clark came out of Stanford and started this company called Silicon Graphics that was, designed to take some of the research that he had done at Stanford. But I mean, think about where Intel started, when Fairchild started, when National Semiconductor started. I mean, it was different in the sense that there certainly wasn't as many absolute companies, but there already was all the infrastructure was very much here in Silicon Valley in terms of the money, the venture capitalists, the legal infrastructure.
Yeah.
Employees here were comfortable taking risks in smaller companies. They fed off the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
So 95 was a fantastic time to start a company, and right before the craziness really began to hit in the first internet craze in 96, 97 is when things really started to take off. But certainly 95 was a great time to start a company too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps.
It was a fun time.
Yeah.
So we sold 3D Effects in 2000, and I took about a year off to just decompress and figure out what I wanted to do next. And then I met Gil Tanay and Shampol Lamari through a mutual friend. We met in 2001, and discussed a variety of different ideas, but ultimately came to the idea that Java was truly revolutionizing how people were programming really anything, mobile devices to servers, and specifically the opportunity that we felt was going to be transformative and a lot of money made was in enterprise Java, and what was going on within the world of server-side Java, big enterprises embracing Java, and problems that we felt were inevitable that needed to be solved.
Okay, cool. So you met, that leads into how did Azul get started?
Yeah.
So you met Gil.
Gil. Yeah, we met Gil and Sham. Very, like you almost scripted, coffee shop. That's where we hung out a lot.
Cool.
We did design.
Which shop was it?
It was actually technically coffee/sandwich. La Boulangerie in Menlo Park, Santa Cruz Ave. In fact, La Boulangerie, I never can pronounce it. sits on the corner of Santa Cruz and Chestnut Street. And so for a long time, before we came up with the name Azul, we were called Chestnut Systems because of lack
Interesting,
of,
yeah.
usually presented in quotes because we didn't really like it as the final name, but it was a name.
So
And
cool.
so that's how we originally positioned ourselves. It was a fascinating time because this was as the bubble was imploding, and we had come to the conclusion that solving the Java problem in the enterprise could not be done in a pure software manner. Based on the technology that existed, the current server technology, and what we felt needed to be done, we came to the conclusion that a hardware-based approach was needed.
Okay.
And so we were very much out of vogue in terms of what we were pitching to the venture capitalists. Again, 2001 timeframe, we were pitching, we're going to need to raise a ton of money, we're going to design our own microprocessors, our own systems, our own software. It was a big play that needed a lot of money.
And what was the pitch back then?
The pitch was very similar to the value prop that we offer today, which is enterprises struggle with various issues with kind of mission critical Java deployments. We developed a product eventually that was called Vega that was dramatically more scalable and had lower, better response time, etc., relative to what they could get with off-the-shelf platforms.
So were they feeling the hardware part or the software part, or hardware was all over then, right? Or no?
Hardware was becoming out of vogue, I would say,
Okay.
in that time frame, which was one of the reasons it was a great feat, I would say, that we raised a lot of money and started the company in that time because hardware was not in vogue. The bubble was imploding. There was not a lot of money to be had, and we're kind of pitching this go big or go home kind of strategy.
Huh.
So, and ironically, the question we faced all the time is, this is a really cool idea, why can't you just do it in pure software, right? And so we faced that question over and over and over again. But as we explained, the reasons behind the focus on hardware, really the investors ultimately understood that, we would like to have done it in software too, because obviously it's a much easier model to sell and needs a lot less money to raise. It just couldn't be done.
Right.
So it took us almost a decade later to eventually do it in software. But and a lot of the reasons that we were eventually able to do it in software is from what we learned from the hardware product. So it wasn't a lost effort by any means.
Who did you partner with to do the hardware portion, or surely you had to, right?
No, it's all in-house design.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It was quite an effort. One of
I
our
bet.
board members called it the lunar landing of engineering. I mean, it was quite a major effort. We hired a phenomenal team of engineers, and again, since hardware was kind of out of vogue in the time, we truly had a who's who of technologists to choose from. So
do you have
fantastic
any
team.
photos from this time period? I'm acting like it was like the 1800s, but seriously.
Good question. I don't know.
That would be cool. Yeah, that would be cool.
So I guess the other notable point was the very first meeting we ever had with the venture capitalist pitching at the time Chestnut Systems was on 9/11. So that was
Are you kidding?
very very strange day, obviously, and ironically, for lack of a better word, we pitched Red Point Ventures, and they ended up being one of our first investors. So it was a successful meeting on a very, very strange day.
Yeah. Something good came out of that.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yep.
So there we were, started. Do you remember the day you actually got funding? So it was 9/11 you found out that you got funding?
Yeah, that was the very first meeting. And, going through a venture capital process is it's quite a process and takes time and meetings and more meetings and more meetings and more meetings and questions and goes on and on and on. The company was formally founded, meaning formally incorporated, as well as initially funded in March of 2002.
March 2002, and then on the staff or the founders or the let's call it C-suite, who was on at that time?
So myself, Gil, and Sean Polidori.
Cool.
Yep. We were in the first floor of the Red Point building. So
Where's that?
It's up on Sand Hill.
Yeah, so this is amazing. I wish I was around. There would be tons of photos. Okay, so on this journey, I guess, do you want to tell a little bit about how we've transformed from then to now in 2015, and then who we are in the tech space, and also talk about open source?
There's like five different things.
So let's just go. So from 2000, or from 9/11 to 2015, how have we transformed?
Yeah. So kind of the major steps along the way is from the formal formation of the company to the first product. So we formally founded the company and raised a little bit of money in March of 2002. Raised more money in the fall of 2002. Fall of 2002 is when we really began the engineering effort of the first hardware products.
Okay.
Those hardware products, the original Vega 1, first generation Vega hardware appliances, shipped in 2005. So that was the first time that Azul really had a true product in the market. We were selling, we were meeting enterprises, we were we were there. We were trying to become relevant in the market. Through the subsequent 4 more years, we developed 2 more generations of Vega hardware, all of which bigger, better, faster, cheaper, all the usual things that comes along with traditional Moore's Law trajectory. Along the way, as we were continuing to build the business and continue to raise a ton of money, and that was just we were 200-person company, everything from sales to marketing to engineering to operations, everything's big.
Yeah.
In the hardware model.
Yeah.
Well, we were in the midst of growing that business, and then 2008 came around, which of course was brutal for really everyone, and that I think there was a very almost Darwinian effect of 2008. Those companies that found a way to survive through 2008 emerged as companies that were real. They had real technology. They had real need in the market. They had real investors that would hang through them through some of the most brutal times. And so we emerged from that. But as part of that process, any company I think that makes it through that is forced to do some deep soul searching in terms of where do you want to be in 5 years, and if there's any time to make some hard decisions that otherwise maybe would be too difficult to make, that was a time that forced you to make those decisions. And for us specifically, it forced us to really stare into the crystal ball and see where the product could be taken, and that led us down the path of developing pure software solutions.
Amazing.
And so as part of the the craziness that happened really was transformative to Azul, because it began down the path of pure software. 2010 was the first incarnation of that pure software product. That was when we formally introduced Zing into the market.
And just Zing, what is Zing?
Zing is a Java virtual machine that allows for really the high-end Java applications in the enterprise to be able to be run more consistently, more scalable, much better latency, better response curves. Java in the enterprise, the interesting aspect of Java in the enterprise, Java of course is the world's most popular programming language. There's 1 billion downloads a year, according to Oracle, of the Java runtime, or the JVM as it's called. There are over 10 million Java programmers in the world. So Java itself is, I liken it to it's the mortar or the brick wall of the enterprise. It's very, very popular. It's everywhere.
Okay.
It's not perfect. It works. If it didn't work, it wouldn't be so popular.
Yeah.
But at the kind of the most mission critical demanding applications that are built on Java, they are not able to meet consistently all the business requirements that are necessary in today's, as we call a real-time business. And a lot of that is technical in nature as to why that's the case. At the end of the day, these enterprises may not really care about the whys, but they do care about the whats. And the whats are consumers are leaving their shopping carts because the website is not responsive enough. Trades are not being processed as fast as maybe the guy across the street. Risk is not being, the risk profile of a certain position or a basket of assets may not be able to be maintained and updated consistently enough. So these are major problems that affect the enterprise. And because the applications are built on Java, many times the problem actually is related to how the Java application gets run, and that's the actual piece of software called the JVM that is installed on any and all computers that need to run a Java have to have a JVM installed.
Okay.
The wonderful thing about Java is it's all standards based. Anyone can develop a JVM that seemingly can run any and all Java applications. It's a lot easier said than done. A JVM in today's world is about 10 million lines of source code. It's a very big, complex piece of software.
Yeah.
The industry standard is the JVM that was originally developed by Sun and now is part of Oracle after that acquisition. The industry standard JVM is something called Hotspot from Sun/Oracle, and Hotspot is a nice, generically good piece of software. For most generic Java applications, it's absolutely fine, but for those high-end applications, as I mentioned, the off-the-shelf Hotspot is not able to meet the scale, the response time, the performance objectives of today's businesses that are more demanding. And so that's exactly where Zing comes in. So Zing is a drop-in replacement for the Hotspot JVM that fixes these technical problems that lead to businesses not meeting their objectives. And so in today's world, Zing is sold into financial services organizations that power their trading platforms, their risk engines, their compliance applications, their message buses, all these types of things in the world of any sort of electronic trading, electronic markets, exchanges, proprietary trading shops. All of these are markets that we serve with Zing today. We also serve large, what we call web scale properties, so large websites that need performance or better consistency of performance. That could be e-commerce, it could be large SaaS companies like SuccessFactors, as an example, is a large customer of Zing. Travel companies like Priceline. The common theme across all of these types of enterprise customers for us is usually related to some sort of response time in a demanding situation. So for large web scale properties, it probably means that there's too many users on the site, or the user demand has grown to the point that the website might become unresponsive. People are turning away. Consumers are looking towards a competitor. That's obviously not good.
Yeah.
In the world of electronic trading, it could mean, certainly given how brutally competitive that space is, that trades are not being placed at the prices that make sense financially, or trades aren't just they're getting they're not getting a customer may not be actually be winning the right to trade on behalf of their clients, etc. So that's the common thing for Zing. We have marquee customers globally. Certainly the majority of the world's largest investment banks use Zing today. So we are very well established in that space. Mm-hmm. And we continue to grow that business aggressively, both domestically here in the United States, but certainly a big part of our growth strategy and success is growing the success of Zing internationally.
Cool.
So what we have developed over the course of the years here is clearly an expertise in Java. We are recognized as being true experts in this field through our continued nomination and approval as part of the Java community process and the executive committee as part of the JCP, the more customers that we serve, I think our reputation continues to grow and grow. And one of the things we recognized several years ago was that there is a strong need for an alternative to the Oracle JVM. As I mentioned, the Oracle JVM is a generically good JVM. It is
Yeah.
the world's most popular JVM. It is the de facto standard for how Java gets deployed wherever it is, on the desktop and the server side, etc. But the reality is that no business makes sense with only one supplier. And what we heard loud and clear from our customers was that Zing is great for those high-end mission critical deployments, but what about all the other Java
Yeah.
application
Yeah.
footprint that need great support? And another aspect of it was they would much prefer an open source solution. In today's day and age, while certainly there still is a large amount of proprietary software that is sold, it's clear that from enterprises top down, CEOs, CIOs, all the way down to the development community, that all things being equal, open source is strongly preferred over proprietary for obvious reasons. Open source is considered to be safer in the sense that if a vendor were to no longer support a certain aspect of it, the fact that
Right.
it's open source means it could be self-supported by the customer.
Right.
It means that it may not be beholden to one certain vendor, which
Yeah.
again offers freedom and flexibility.
Yeah.
So clearly it's an open source world. So as part of our strategy for building an alternative to the Hotspot JVM was to also build an open source strategy such that we could serve the absolutely broadest possible Java community at large, and also augment our Zing business, the high-end business,
Yeah.
with a very broadly focused alternative JVM. And that product we partnered with Microsoft to develop, and the brand name of this open source JVM is called Zulu. Zulu was developed in partnership with Microsoft, initially launched at the Java 1 in September 2013. And we initially launched Zulu with Microsoft, specifically targeting a open source, 100% compatible and compliant implementation of the JVM based on OpenJDK. So it's a
Yeah.
a big, robust very relevant project, supported by many companies and many individuals. And we announced Zulu initially in September 2013. We have quickly augmented the 100% open source Zulu JVM with a variety of different support packages, with a variety of different supported operating environments, various operating systems, various hypervisors, various cloud providers. And really the goal of Zulu is a true drop-in open source alternative to Oracle's Hotspot. Zulu is not about being better technically, being faster, being having better response times, all the things we mentioned with Zing.
Yeah.
We want Zulu to be truly, arguably bug for bug with Hotspot. We want it to be a true drop-in replacement. So why does a customer want to choose Zulu over Oracle's Hotspot? Well, there's several reasons. First, of course, it's free to download, open source. We have 10-year availability commitment, such that we're not going to pull the rug out from underneath a supported Java version like Oracle is doing. So we think that's very important. So developers and enterprises will continue to have freely downloadable, freely available older versions of Java from 10 years from the initial general availability of a major Java release. That's a big deal. Secondly, customers choose Zulu and choose Azul because as an open source solution, the way that the product is priced is much more flexible than traditional proprietary software. So we sell support for a pure open source model. So with Zulu, really the business model is to be the Red Hat of the JVM space. So we're not selling proprietary software. We are selling support for open source software, and as a result of that, it's a very powerful message for our customer base that again is delivering them exactly the same JVM that they have today, but it's now pure open source. And quite frankly, because we're a vendor exclusively focused on Java, we can offer much more focused, more responsive support than big organizations like Oracle.
So, where was I? I forget what I was going to ask. Go ahead. Keep going.
Well, that was my spiel.
No, that was really good. That was actually really beautiful. If I could go out and run to one group of people and tell them about Zulu, who would it be?
I think the initial, where we're really trying to spread the word certainly is in the development community. I think Zulu, because it is an open source solution and offering, as we've seen with so many other open source solutions that eventually do, we do want to make money on Zulu. We make money by selling support offerings, but it always starts in the development community. And the ideal goal with Zulu is to make it the de facto JVM that is used by developers across every platform that matters. And we're making tremendous headway towards that process. Oracle is obviously very established, and Hotspot certainly is very well known and understood. But it's an open source world, and developers want choice, and that's exactly what Zulu provides is a true open source solution to the closed source Hotspot.
Cool. So what would you say about, what would you want everyone to know about our support team?
Well, our support team is truly world class. We've been supporting the world's most demanding Java environments for now 13 plus years.
Yeah.
And what this means is that we've been exposed to some of the most mission critical, kind of urgent type of situations through that experience, and that dates all the way back to when we were supporting the hardware solutions to Zing to now Zulu.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what we consistently hear from our customers is that the technology and the products, these things are great, but at the end of the day, they choose vendors that they know are going to be by their side when things go wrong, because things do inevitably go wrong. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
And what we have received consistently rave reviews on is that we will be by the customer whether or not it's our problem or not. And we are the traditional Avis we try harder kind of model, because we're clearly not the size of Oracle. We're getting bigger and bigger every day. We're becoming more and more relevant every day, but Oracle is Oracle and Azul is Azul, and the scale and size of the organizations is dramatically different. However, how we differentiate from Oracle is that when you engage with Azul, you're going to have a true expert that knows Java.
Yep.
You're going to have someone that is deeply passionate about Java, is highly skilled in the Java virtual machine. You are literally several steps away from the customer support engineer to the developer, so that as issues come up, we're not a large distributed organization. We are a very tightly connected 24/7 type of organization that can triage, identify, make changes quickly and as needed by the customer base.
Yeah.
One of the things that does often happen, because as a certainly in the context of bigger vendors like Oracle, oftentimes what happens is something may go wrong with the application, and because Azul is in the mix, and we're always going to be the one that is perceived to be, the small guy, it must be their fault. Yeah. So what happens is we get called in to help triage issues, And in many cases, the issue wasn't our issue. It was maybe an application level issue, or could be an operating system level problem, or hardware problem, or what have you. But as I said, what we win rave reviews on is the fact that we're right there by the customer, and we're going to work with them side by side to resolve the issue until it's complete. And I think that's what really differentiates our support is that we're with the customer all the way.
Yeah, it's amazing. Awesome. So I think you've already kind of covered this, but I would love to hear maybe a little more. Who should take a look at our products and why? When I ask this, I'm thinking more along the lines of, would you say every CTO and every CIO we'd like to know who we are, or is it enterprises in general? Or on an individual level, who would we want to talk to?
Well, I think we have solutions and a story for a very broad base here. Our traditional business and quite frankly continued business is the enterprise.
Okay.
And so these are, but that's a massive statement, right? Because at the end of the day, we do sell to companies that are in the business of generating revenue and have the wherewithal to be able to pay a company like Azul for something, whether that's Zing or Zulu support or what have you.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, we, especially in the context of both Zing and Zulu, we're a one-stop shop for the best JVM products out there.
Okay.
And really the Zulu piece was one of the critical missing pieces of the story, in that originally with the Vega hardware and then with Zing, we've always owned that high end of the space, those demanding applications. But just by the reality, most applications, and by most I mean by number of applications counted or number of servers installed on, et cetera, most applications are not mission critical. They're departmental, or they're ancillary applications, support applications that if they go down or they have an issue, it may not have a direct revenue impact or business impact on the organization. And that's not just true of Java, that's true of any application. Most are not mission critical. So while with Zing we have and continue to serve the high end of the space, until we had Zulu, we could not come to an enterprise or an organization and say, we are your full stop JVM supplier. Everything from your demanding applications to your more generic applications. And so now we are a single vendor that can address all those various needs. And so in that regard, we appeal to different people within enterprises. On the technical level, especially in the context of Zing, we appeal to the architects, the CTOs, the managing directors who own the business side of the applications that, why is it that my application is not performing the way that it needs to all the time? Those are the types of people that we address with the Zing product. With the Zulu product, we appeal to the CIOs who care more about customer support and cost and making sure that their enterprise is up and running across all sorts of various conditions. CIOs are typically going to be the ones that have open source mandates that they're trying to steer their vendor selections away from those proprietary vendors. We certainly appeal to kind of the IT and the DevOps side of enterprises as well. Again, given the strong open source benefits of Zulu, that now developers and operators.
Okay. Well, I think that's about all I have. I mean, it's a awesome commentary. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Good for now.
Okay, cool. Because otherwise I'll keep asking questions.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, sweet.
We can have it.
Okay, sweet.
We can have it.
Okay, sweet.